There we go. And welcome to Impact 2026, our continuing conversation where we talk about all different types of topics. What's going on right now, current events. We talk about race, we talk about religion, we talk about everything that you can think about. This is that continuing conversation. And this is that conversation where you also have the opportunity to participate by typing in your questions and your comments into the comment section. So please feel free to do that. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, just go ahead and type your stuff in there. If we're doing saying something that you like, type it in. Saying something that you did dislike, type it in. If you just have something that you want to say, type it in. This is that opportunity for you. We also like to remind you of all of the different type of offers that we have going on. So on Thursdays, we have Thursday Thirst. It's a weekly Bible study. That's the opportunity that you have to dive deeper into the Bible. That's from it's at 7 o'clock, and it's on Facebook and YouTube. 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I like to say. And so Thursday Thirst, weekly Bible study. Please join us. On Sundays at 10 o'clock, we have a time of worship. That is 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, of course, again. That is on Facebook, YouTube, and in person at the address on the screen. If you are in the local area, please come by and join us. And then at 7 o'clock on Tuesdays, we have a time of prayer from 7 to 7:45. And so that's the opportunity to pray with the ministry. If you pray anytime between that time, 7 to 7:45, you are praying with the ministry. You do not have to pray from 7 to 7:45 unless you feel so inclined to do. But anytime between that time, you will be praying with the ministry. All right. Impact 2026. This is our continuing conversation. And as always, the conversation will continue. What we're talking about today is something that you already know about. It is the Iran war, but we're going to talk about it from, or Iran war, depending on how you pronounce it. Well, we're going to talk about it from just a slightly different scenario. So, what was brought to my attention with the war was the as you call it, kind of the effects of other countries involved. And so, as you know, we have the Iran war. The United States and Israel decided that they wanted to bomb Iran, and they bombed Iran multiple times, multiple days. It lasted a long period of time. We went into a time frame of supposedly a memorandum of understanding, peace talks. We had a little peace moment, and as of this today, today's the 21st. As of today of July, we are back almost as you would say a full-on war. More so the United States and Iran than Israel right now. But Iran is bombing us. We are bombing them. People are losing their lives. It is a war. And another part of it is that the Strait of Hormuz has been restricted. And so for people, you should all be familiar with this, but I just have to rehash just in case you don't recall or it's something that you don't know. But the Strait of Hormuz is one of the major passageways where ships go from the Middle Eastern countries out to deliver their product through the rest of the world. One of the main products is, of course, oil that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And so Iran and the United States both have restricted passageway through the Strait of Hormuz through threats, blockades, all of those sort of things. And so as a result, the price of gasoline has gone up. The price of oil has gone up. Those are not the same thing, just in case you didn't know. And so all of that has gone up. Now the conflict has gotten even bigger because there's some other waterways that people go through, and they are now being restricted as well through some other groups who are sympathetic to the Iranians and what's going on with them. And so you have the Strait of Hormuz closed up. 1/5 of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's a lot. 1/5 is a lot of the oil, and so that's what's going on. So that was kind of a broad way, a long kind of way of reminding you what's going on with the war and with the Strait of Hormuz. So here's the thing: in the United States, we don't really have to worry too much about the price of oil. We do, but we have plenty of gasoline here. We have plenty of sweet crude here or light crude or whatever you want to call it here. Um, and so it really doesn't affect us as much for our fueling costs like it does some other countries. Our prices have still gone up. If you go to the pump, you see it's over $4. The price of fuel has definitely gone up. But what the big impact is for people is that oil goes into everything, plastics, and it goes into fertilizer, and it goes into a lot of other things. And so it is inconvenient for us here in the United States. Everything's a little bit more expensive. All right, now that I've said all that, and that was a long-winded way of saying it, here's what we're talking about today. And here's what we have to look at from our perspective as the United States and our perspective as moral people, the people of Christ. Come to find out that the prices of goods has gone crazy across the world. Because again, I told you 1/5 of the oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And so many of the countries who may have different type of economic structures are really, really struggling. And I'm not talking about Europe. I'm talking about Africa. I'm talking about Africa. So in some of the African countries, they're really being punished. I just found out, so Nigeria, one of the countries in Africa. So in Nigeria, they have a population that is really struggling because of their price of gas. Gasoline has doubled. The price of fertilizer has significantly increased, which means all the crops and all the food prices have gone really high. Now, when you're looking at a country like Nigeria, where they have a large population who is living in poverty or right at the poverty line, what the United Nations has stated is that any country like that, where you have a lot of people right near the poverty line, it's pushing people into poverty because all of their costs have gone up. All of their costs have gone up because the United States has decided that we are going to start this war that is then going to cause the Strait of Hormuz to get closed, which is going to cause the price of oil to go up. And for us, it's a small inconvenience because a little bit of prices go up, but nothing major here. But in other countries, the price, their price is double because they rely more so on the countries that are dealing with the Strait of Hormuz. So if they're getting a majority of their gasoline from Middle Eastern countries and the prices have gone up, they're going to feel it a lot more. If they're getting a majority of their products from places like China, who gets the oil from the Middle East, or other countries in the eastern part of the world, their prices go up even higher. And so now what we're doing is we're pushing kids into poverty, pushing people towards malnutrition. In essence, pushing people closer to death. And it is for what? It's because we're having our war. And sometimes we forget to look at people who we look at the unintended consequences. And so when we're thinking about the war, when we're talking about the war, we're talking to one another. We're like, yeah, man, this is crazy. You know, we're bombing Iran and we're doing this and we're doing that. But we don't talk about all of the other people who are being negatively affected. We think about the Iranians because we should. You're just bombing people. And you think about what they're going through and the infrastructure that they have that's being blown up and what we've done to them. We think about ourselves and we think about gas prices and our little, the price of goods have gone up a little bit. We think about the European countries because a lot of them get gas and their energy costs. We're not thinking about these other countries who are closer to poverty. So we're looking at our first world, second world, but we're not thinking about these third world, as they call them, countries. These countries who have a little bit more challenging economics, and the kids and the families who are barely surviving, and now their costs to survive is double. Where we are a little bit more inconvenient, their cost to survive is doubling. So we are actually starving out many people in the world. And so when we have these conversations, now it changes from, oh yeah, this is a senseless war, to we're starving countries who have nothing to do with this at all. Comment. Did the president get suckered into a war by Israel? We are still fighting while Israel is doing nothing in regards to the war. Yeah, they backed off. They backed off. They've actually turned their attention back to Palestine. People don't really notice them building out and increasing their border. If you ever get a chance, you can take a look at what they've done. They've built out a yellow line. That's what's called the yellow line, where they negotiated that Israel would not go past bombing any further than they already did, trying to get towards Hamas. But they built out that yellow line, and now there are a lot of fears that because they put some physical permanent borders there, that they're turning that into the new border of Israel. And effectively, they've annexed a lot of Palestine into Israel. And so they use this whole opportunity to increase their territory. So seems like a big giant chess move of misdirection. Now that's probably not the only thing that was going on, and maybe it just is a coincidence, but it seems like because nobody's paying attention now to Palestine anymore. They got all of us off their back, have all our eyes towards Iran, while they're able to increase their territory and take over other people's homes, other people's land. So yeah, I know that it kind of took us off balance and off track. So why are we talking about this and why is it important? It's because of the conversation that we have. And I think what we have to remember sometimes, because I didn't know about this. I didn't think about this. I'm not thinking about the other countries in the Middle East and the African countries whose prices have increased. I've thought about a little bit of the Middle Eastern countries who are getting bombed by Iran because they're supporting the United States or allowing the United States to do what they're doing. But it's all of the other countries who have to get oil, all the other countries who have to get products. And fertilizer, which, again, you need oil to make fertilizer, is a big deal across the world. When you're talking about farmers and you're talking about crops and you're talking about growing things, especially in a lot of places who already have rolling families that come in, have food insecurity that goes on. And so for me, when I look at some of these countries, especially I didn't know Nigeria. When I looked at Nigeria, you look at Niger right next to it, that these countries are struggling significantly. And there's probably many more that I don't know anything about in Asia, Africa, even some of the Eastern European, Southern European countries as well. But there's a lot of countries who are suffering off of the back of the fact that we are playing war games. And so when we have these conversations and we start talking about war, we start talking about, we talk about gasoline, or we talk about Iran having nuclear weapons, or Israel have whatever. What we probably should not forget about is the other people, the other countries, all of the folk who are suffering, and not on our level, where we're just suffering because we can't, gas costs a little bit more. They're suffering because our ability to buy food has been slashed in half, because many of them have said their costs have doubled for food because the cost to produce crops has doubled. And their crops are so, in some of these African countries, it's so much harder to produce crops. It's so much harder to produce farmland and being able to get grain and rice and wheat. And so when you're thinking about a lot of the countries and a lot of the places that the United Nations goes and UNICEF goes and all of these other groups go in order to take care of those who are less fortunate, their costs is also increased. So they have less and less ability to do so. Now, with a side thought on that, now it comes back to the United States even more. All of this is going on while we, United States, as the government of the United States decided to cut back on aid for the worldwide aid, taking out USAID, one of the larger organizations that helps people with medical care and food and other things like this. And so you looked at the game plan from the beginning. First, they cut back on the aid. You hear stories about millions of dollars worth of aid and food that rotted away or was destroyed in warehouses because we cut the aid because we thought it was wasteful or Doge or whatever you want to call it. And now we've moved to the point of where we're fighting wars, and the countries that need aid, their prices are doubling. And so as a country, we're double dipping on abusing other countries who have nothing to do with anything, as far as war, or we're not even having trade conversations with them. So they're not a part of the trade thing. They're not a part of immigration. They're too far away, and not really sending people here. You have to be wealthy to be able to, a trip across the across the ocean to get over here to the United States. But we're affecting all these countries who are not related to any of the conflicts that we have on or any of the problems that we're so-called talking about. But yet these countries are suffering in silence because we're not paying attention because we don't know any better. We don't know unless you happen to come across a good news source and a good news article, or maybe somebody on Facebook or something knows about people in different countries. But these other countries are suffering because the United States is now squeezing them through war and by cutting back on aid that we used to take care of others with. And so when we have this conversation, it shouldn't be a conversation. It shouldn't be a conversation just about us in Iran. It should be a conversation about how many other people are going to die or suffer, how many other people are going to struggle because we're playing war games. And let's not forget about them. Let's pay attention and remember them and bring up bring up the fact that other countries are struggling. Comments. This also impacts economic growth in certain countries. Yes. They are looking at a factory shutdowns, raw materials, the automotive industry. Absolutely. That's right there. It is a big economic hurt on others. And so when we talk about ourselves and we talk about being Christians and we talk about loving thy neighbor, I believe it is not just the neighbor that you can see, it's the neighbor that you can't see. It's not the neighbor that you just focus on, it's the neighbor that you might not even be thinking about around the corner. So if you are doing something and you didn't consider kind of the people around you, you're not really showing love for your neighbor. If you're having unintended consequences where you're hurting somebody, you're not really showing love for your neighbor. And when you find out and you don't change your behavior, you're not really loving your neighbor. We just had here a concert here at the church here at Imani. And before the concert, what we did was we went out to the people in the neighborhood and put information on their door talking about the concert. Why? One, because you want to invite people. But two, because you want to give people notice about what's going on. There's going to be a couple more people parking in the neighborhood. There's going to be a little bit more noise in the neighborhood. It may be an inconvenience to you. But because you love your neighbor, you kind of let them know what's going on. And if anybody had come to the church and had said something, we would be able to have a conversation to see if there's anything we can do. Now, in certain situations, there's nothing we can do. But is there anything we can do to make sure that it's good for you or this works? Because that's what loving your neighbor is. So the neighbors that we didn't see, not people that we've talked to, maybe we've never seen before, but they got a notice on their door about what's going on because unintended consequences. It may have been a little bit louder, but they knew what time it started. So if you work late, you work overnight, you knew, all right, well, at 3 o'clock, they could be having something down the street. So maybe instead of just going to sleep early like I normally do, I'm gonna have to wear some earplugs or, it's only gonna be going on for a couple of hours. So I'm not gonna be surprised at what's going on. That's what loving your neighbor is. And as the United States, that's what we're not doing right now, I believe. And as individual people, I think a lot of us are not really doing it in our conversations. We're not talking about the other countries. We're talking about the US, we're talking about Iran. But we're not talking about everyone else who may be struggling, starving, the economic impact, like Vincent, like you said, the economic impact is real. Like it is real for other countries. What is Israel's plan to get the U.S. distracted so it could take the land and destroy the Palestinians? Yes, that seems like it really was, because like I said, and if you don't believe me, you go online, credible reports, go to credible news sources, and you will see it is the yellow line, the negotiated line that they decided that this is where we're not going to go past. Now they're turning it into they're physically digging up the ground to create a physical border that will be a permanent border that may now be the new border of Israel. Palestinians are not there because they're on the other side for the most part, because that's where they pushed them back to. But now they physically can't even get back to their former homes and their former land. So yeah, pay attention to that because I think you're right. It was all a trick. Another comment. Trump wants to charge Canada because of the smoke from the fires. He did not offer assistance to control the fires. We have an administration that just wants to make money. There are no plans or desires to help others. Yeah, and that's another one. At the end of the day, there's a difference between fires that you cause because you're blowing up countries, and then there's fires that come from natural disasters or fires that come from accidents. And so we're causing fires everywhere else around the world. Venezuela, where we're blowing people up, blowing boats up in international waters. And that's just the stuff. And honestly, that's just the stuff that we know about. Not to sound like a conspiracy guy, but that's just the stuff that we know about. Blowing up Iran. What are we doing for these other countries? What are we doing for all these other places where we're causing issues? But yet we want to charge someone for having a fire, a forest fire that causes smoke. We've caused a lot of smoke in a lot of different countries. And so I think it's hypocritical. And again, this is stuff that we can't just ignore. We have to have it in that conversation, especially when you're talking to others, because what we don't need is there to be any confusion when people are talking. You hear people talking and they're confused. Like, oh, well, what we're doing isn't that bad. And this administration, no, we need to be, whether you think this administration is good, bad, or whatever, you just need to have all the information. And I think a lot of folks don't. And it's because we don't have those conversations. And we don't come from a Christian perspective in the sense of what are we thinking about our neighbors? Goods won't make it to their destination on time. Also, there will be an impact on major retailers. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so again, that has an effect, a significant effect here in the United States where our prices go up. But let's think further even more to the countries where they have the factories where they're making goods, where they're making clothes, where they're making electronics, where they're making just a lot of different items. If they, because we can't afford it and they're not being able to ship the stuff over here, that means they're going to need less. That means they're going to make less. That means there are going to be less people who have jobs in these other countries. And then there's more people who may be closer to that poverty line that get pushed down into poverty. Because that's what the United Nations said. It's not the fact that people were poor. They were right there. They're just barely making it in these countries. And barely making it over there and barely making it over here is very, very different. They don't have unemployment, they don't get Social Security and some other things, and Medicaid and Medicare, So they're basically right at the line. And because we choked out the retailers, they don't need as many people in the factory. And so now people have lost their jobs. And now how are they going to feed their families? And so, there's a lack of accountability. Absolutely. It's exactly what it is. It's a lack of accountability. And at the end of the day, you're not hearing people talk about it. And so unfortunately, the people who we charge to talk about these things, our journalists, our reporters, who really kind of bring us information, who we kind of trust to give us good information, they're not talking about this. They don't talk about the other countries. They really don't care about the worldwide impact. They really only care about what we got going on here. Or they just don't know, unfortunately. Is South America charging the U.S. for the smoke that moved down into their countries? No. No. And so, that's the thing. Nobody you charging people for the pollution or air pollution that we have going on all over the place. And so, all right. I know that was kind of. Hopefully that was, insightful to the fact, because it shocked me when I sat back and I looked and I thought about the other countries that are being affected. Think about the other people that are being affected. And we're being distracted, It was all fun and games where we're looking at the World Cup. It's all fun and games when you can pay attention to soccer and everything like that all over the place. And some of those same countries or countries that border some of those countries are struggling. It's all cool when you're really not thinking, you're just looking at gas prices and you're like, oh, well, prices just gone up a little bit. And you hear those people say, well, that's the cost of freedom. Yeah. But what about all the other countries and all the other people and all the other families who have nothing to do with this, who don't care anything about our little fights with Iran, who don't really care about the fact that, if Iran wants to have a nuclear program, that doesn't affect them at all. What they do know is that they need to feed their families. That they need to be able to feed themselves and that they need to be able to take care of their children. And so as much as we sit back. This is not a traditional. This is not a traditional war. This is a situation of where um, the leadership here in the United States has made a bunch of bad decisions and has made it so that the cost to survive in the world has gone up. And the United States, even after this is all over, continue to play with the idea of just charging people and boats and everything to go through the strait anyway, which again will be a permanent tax on the whole entire world. Uh, and so we need to have these conversations and we need to speak truth to it. Think about the other countries, not the United States, not Iran, not even Israel or any other ones. That doesn't need to be the conversation. The conversation needs to be about all the other countries and all the other people who are being affected because we got some people who just want to fight, people who just want to try to dominate each other and do whatever. If we're talking about our neighbors, we got to think about the neighbors that we don't see. All right. Man, that was good. That was good. I appreciate the comments because that really is it. You know, a lot of this stuff, when you talk about this lack of accountability, when you're talking about the goods and the economics of it all, where goods are not going to make it to where they're supposed to be and all the prices are rising. Yeah, when you're talking about the trick, where we are being tricked into paying attention to something else so that other countries were, so now we don't longer pay attention to what's going on in Palestine and what's going on with Israel. A lot of this stuff is just distractions sometimes. And so, yeah, we really need to care about what's going on in these other countries. All right. That's it. That was that's it. All right, as a reminder, I want to remind people that on Thursday we have our weekly Bible study, Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Please join us. It's on Facebook and YouTube. That's our deep dive into the Bible. On Sundays at 10 o'clock, we have worship service, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Facebook, YouTube, and in person at the address that's on your screen. If you are in the Henrico County, Richmond, Virginia area, please feel free to join us. And then on Tuesdays, we have a time of prayer from 7 to 7:45. If you're praying anytime in between that time, you are praying with the ministry. And as always, we have Impact 2026. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again.
Sometimes you'll want